you ever feel like your financial life is run by 4-year-olds? Yeah. Well, psychologists say that our unconscious identity is fully formed by the age of 4. Unconscious identity. We then get to spend the rest of our life trying to unbury that stuff, right? Which is sort of why we come together. But the premise of our book, which is it's not about the money, is just that. It's about getting in touch with this core story, the ones that we decided what money meant before we were 4 years old. We had either an isolated experience or a stream of experiences in the home perhaps that we were raised in, or maybe some other event in our life that created this core story, and we decided that's what this means. That's what money means. And you've been around a 4-year-old? Yeah. They're very imaginative and creative, but not real logical sometimes, right? And not real experienced. Yeah, this guy. So we're going to look today. We've looked at the core story. We've looked at the archetypes. Today we're going to look at creating balance, healthy wealth. Healthy wealth. Isn't that a nice turn of phrase? Healthy wealth. And how to live financially free in this world and of it. Because we're in the physical realm, right? We might as well figure out how best to operate and live and move within this for maximum joy. Because that's what we're here for, right? Joy and happiness. My talk is being renewed by the power of our minds. Science continues to confirm for us what spirituality has known forever, that our minds and our thoughts actually influence the experiences that we call life. Many of us on the spiritual path struggle between the idea of wealth creation and good works. There seems to be a disconnect in those, that they cannot be together, and that you have to be one or the other. And there's a misunderstanding in the goodness of God and the giving and receiving of that good through its creation. So that core story that we formed about the meaning of money back when we were very, very young has us focusing typically on money or objects outside of ourselves, doesn't it? On things outside of ourselves rather than what is within us. If we're unhappy with our situation or our money or something else in our lives, we tend to blame something outside of ourselves for our unhappiness. We tend to blame something outside of ourselves. Examples in the book that he uses are, my boss is too demanding. That's why I'm unhappy in my job. My boss is too demanding. Or my car keeps breaking down. It's my car's fault. Or my spouse is spending too much. We look to the external. And what that does, Brent suggests, the author, that focusing on the external can blind us to what needs to actually change within us to heal. When we're blaming others for the situation, we're focused on that external. And we know that all life, living, is from the inside out. And that can be successful like we teach here or not, right? But it's from the inside out. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at those financial archetypes. Everybody get theirs? Sorta? One or two? Narrowing it down? Focusing in on it? It's been a fun little thing, hasn't it? And the ideas and behaviors that are resulting, that's from viewing life through that core story that we formed as children. We've created this archetype through which we experience our financial life. And the interesting thing is that as I've looked at this book, this idea of core story is in all areas of our life, isn't it? We probably have a core story around what relationship means. We probably have a core story around what career is about. We probably have a core story about our health. So it's interesting as we move through this, while Brent is a financial planner and spiritualist, he's also talking about that bigger picture, and these things, these ideas and practices that he has really do apply to all areas of our lives. When we can get at that core, that subconscious basement thinking, if you will, and pull that stuff up into the light of consciousness, of our conscious awareness today, because most of us have been on a spiritual journey and a spiritual path sufficiently enough to know what it is we want. We have clarity around that, but life isn't working out that way. And it's like, what's going on? I do my practices, I do the teaching, what's going on? It's this deep hidden stuff that we weren't aware of. Most of us before the 1st of October, when we started this series, probably didn't know we had a core story and an archetype we were dealing with, did we? Now we know. Now we know. Now we can begin to transform that. And the same is true in all these other areas. If you're struggling in one particular area of your life, look for that core story, the core meaning from a very young age. Again, psychologists say the unconscious identity is formed before we're 4 years old. That applies across the board, doesn't it? So when we can uncover that and bring that out of the basement of darkness of subconscious into the light of awareness, we can begin to transform. And that's what we're going to talk about, practice on how to do that. So both the core story and the financial archetype operate in that unconscious realm. They operate in that reactive unconscious realm. When we're triggered by something, we react from those places, right? That's where we react from. But when we understand that, we can begin to put more of our current conscious awareness on it and live a more conscious and holistic sort of existence. Have you heard of the Buddhist practice of the middle way? The middle way. It's a way of moderation between the extremes of sensual indulgence and self-mortification. So it's a moderation between the extremes. In the Bible, in Romans 12:2, this is a passage that is used a lot in New Thought. It says, "Do not imitate the way of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind," changing your thinking. Changing your thinking. We've made up these stories, these core stories, because of things in the world, things that were happening external to us. We made up a story to deal with it, to protect ourselves perhaps, to deal with pain. But we used that as a way of dealing with something that was happening in our world. And we can transform our beliefs and actions through changing or renewing our minds. But that renewal requires practice, patience, and a new way. Because we know when we keep doing things the same way, we get the same result. Yeah. So the author has a lot of exercises in the book. We've done many of them in our Tuesday night classes to help us to dig a little more deeply into the material, to understand our core story, to understand our archetypes. And I want to use one of his practices today for us, if you'll indulge me just a little bit. But before we show you the questions and things, I want to set this up. Remember the 4-year-old, right? Remember the 4-year-old. The instructions are to answer these 3 questions from the perspective of your 4-year-old child. Okay? From the perspective of your 4-year-old child. These are all 4-year-olds. He gives the example in the book of a successful businesswoman that he asks one of the questions to. And she gives him an answer about, when I'm out of debt. And he says, did your 4-year-old even really have a concept of what debt is? And she said, oh, no, I guess not. So that was the conscious awareness, wasn't it? So he asked it again, and she went deeper into it and gave him a more honest answer from that 4-year-old perspective. So I'm going to ask you these 3 questions this morning, and I'm going to ask you to think about your financial life, your current experience, maybe past experience, not what you want, what is, what has been, okay? And get into your 4-year-old mind. Think from the perspective of a 4-year-old. This is preschool, right? 4 years old, they're just getting the hang of walking and talking and putting sentences together and all of that good stuff. 4 years old. Take a breath. I will feel safe if. I will feel safe if. If only I could have, I'd be happy. If only I could have blank, I would be happy. What I want more than anything is. What I want more than anything is. Take a breath. Your answers may have surprised you. They may have embarrassed you. Remember Our Lady? The answer that she came up with, she said, I will feel safe if I'm taken care of by someone else financially. Independent, successful business owner, making a good income. She was surprised by that answer. Did not know that resided in the basement of her subconscious. And when I read this, it reminded me of that book from the 1980s, The Cinderella Complex. Anybody familiar with that book? Yeah. Colette Dowling wrote the book, and she said, I found that what I really wanted was to be taken care of. It was not just a question of having someone else pay the bills. I wanted full-time emotional protection, a buffer between me and the world. This was something I had been bred to expect. Someone else should do the hard stuff, not me. Deep stuff that she discovered in the 70s and didn't get the book out until the 80s because she went across the country and interviewed other women. She's like, could this be just me or is this true? And she found across the gamut of all sorts of different women from different socioeconomic levels and lifestyles, everything, that this was a truism with them, those buried, hiding, deep beliefs. Looking for the literal Prince Charming. So gentlemen, does that help you understand some of the psyche of the women, right? It's deep. Now, don't think you're off the hook because you got your own stuff. I didn't do the investigation, but I know you've got your own stuff. I know that. So what happens to us in later life, this all starts in childhood, of course, and in later life, what begins to happen? We then begin to bury and stuff that stuff because our conscious mind knows that's not acceptable. But our subconscious is still feeding on it, still feeding on it. So most of us have a story. Most of us have a story. We may even have a mask. I've got masks up here this morning for Halloween and as part of the talk. We may have a mask that we wear when it comes to our financial persona in the world. We may have a mask. If we are wealthy and embarrassed by it, we may have a mask of poverty or living substantially below our means. If we are maybe in between jobs and having a little bit of financial tightening in our life, we may want to keep that persona of success and abundance with all of our friends, and maybe we end up in a lot of debt because of that, or we're going to dinner with folks and just buying dessert just because we want to hang out with them, but we can't afford dinner, so we're cutting back. We may wear those masks in our life, in our financial world. We may wear masks in all of our areas of our lives, in relationships and career and everything. So what's your mask? What is it about your finances that would embarrass you if someone close to you found out? And there's good news in our story as well. So, according to the author, he says we have within us innate financial wisdom. Doesn't that sound good? Innate financial wisdom. He says no matter who you are or what your present financial situation is, you have an innate wisdom about money that is profound and unique to you. Not the conditioned core story, but the financial life you would live if you were wholly unfettered by your habits, tendencies, and perceived limitations. That is the life of your dreams. That is the life of your dreams. The one that you say, if time and money were no problem, this is what I would do, this is who I would be, this is where I would be, and who I would surround myself with. But look at the conditions of my life, there's no way that can happen. Right? But he's saying we have this innate financial wisdom within us. Those archetypes, that core story has created the glass ceiling for us of limitation. That's what's created it. The innate wisdom that we have, that's our higher self. That's our inner wisdom. That's our connection to universal intelligence. We teach that we are all one. We are a cell in the body of God, so to speak. And as such, we have access to the entire infrastructure of that, all of that infinite wisdom, that which creates universes, that which is life itself. We can tap into that. We have the answers within. That's not an original statement, obviously, that I'm saying. You've heard this before. We all have all of the answers within us. But we can't find them if we keep seeking outside of ourselves. We must go within. Sarah's workshop was profound on Wednesday, and it just anchors me further in that meditation practice, that is the key that unlocks successful living for us, is tapping into that inner wisdom, that inner strength, that inner power that we all have, not searching on the outside. This morning I had an interesting experience in my meditation. I've been asking a question in meditation, and what I realized this morning is I've been asking the wrong question. And when I got the right question, I could feel in my heart and my soul the alignment of the truth of the question, and then the clarity that began to open up in that as to how that was going to come forward. Meditation, I know you hear me say it every week. If you don't have a practice, get one. Sarah has on her website, sarahmclean.com, a lot of information. We've got some other things that she shared with us that I'm going to share later this morning. So that really is, I can't say it enough, and that's why I say it every week. So there you go. So the middle way that we were talking about, the middle way is the art of understanding and using both sides of the path, our core story archetype and our innate wisdom, using the conscious and the subconscious. Right. They're probably in conflict. But the middle way is finding that way to find the strength and the power in both and then walk the middle path. I was reminded as I was writing this about the Kierland Golf Course. Anybody ever played the Kierland Golf Course? It's designed a little bit like a bowl. It's got high sides on it, but the fairway is nice and flat in the middle. So taking the middle way is success on that golf course. If you hit it up on the hills, strange things are going to happen. You're not sure where the ball's going to go. But if you stay in the middle and take the middle way, then you're on the path to success, tee to green. So in the case of our money, the middle way is holding both of these. Finding out how your empire builder, where it's got some negative connotations we've talked about, how is that serving and how can that be the middle way to making sure of the empire that you're building is one of generosity and graciousness and giving back and all of that. How can we combine that core story with our innate wisdom to find an empowering middle way for our lives? Remember, these archetypes that were in the book are the extremes. They're the extremes so that they were poster children, so to speak, of what those archetypes look like so that we could easily identify ours within that. The goal is to find more balance in all of them. Find more balance in all 8 of them. So we need to become aware of the core story, become aware of your dream. What is your dream life? How can they work together? Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, in his book, Can We Talk to God? It's a great book. If you've not read it, I recommend it. He says, we need not spend more than 30 minutes or an hour each day in meditation, but this amount of time is of immeasurable value in our practical life. For it is here that we join the real to the ideal and receive inspiration for action and guidance toward accomplishment. And that's what happened to me today in my meditation. I got that. I got that. And you can too. So I want to move into our practicing the principles this morning and summarize our series. And it really comes down to these three things we've been talking about. It comes down to the core story, to identifying our core story. And it's externally focused and created from that young place. So we can cut ourselves some slack around that, right? If you can recall how you felt during that event or over that time frame, tapping into those emotions might be a way of helping to bring them to the surface and healing them. Tapping into those emotions. Letting go of that old story requires intention. It is something that's been with us for a long time, since before we were 4 years old. Many of us are a little beyond that, so we've carried it a long time. It is a companion. It is a friend, the friend we know. And if we're going to try and change it, we must be intentional. Be patient and intentional. Number 2 is the archetype, or the mask that we wear. Recognizing which one we are can be empowering. For those in the study group who have done so, it has been empowering for us to understand what it is, see how it has affected our lives and the decisions that we've made, and to watch how it impacts us on a daily basis now and begin to balance that out. If you have done the work and you discovered your archetype, you probably discovered one or two that annoy you. Nobody could think that way. What's wrong with those people? That's just wrong. And when you discover that one, that's the one you need to tap into and bring up more in yourself in order to bring more balance to your dominant one. To bring more balance. And the third is, of course, our middle way practice we've talked about today, the moderation between the extremes of our core story and the basement of our subconscious and the innate wisdom, our higher awareness, our higher consciousness of the life that we would love. You can see how those two feel like they're opposites. But when we can bring them together into a middle way, that gentle meditation practice is a way to do that, to lovingly take both ideas into your meditation in search of the middle way, finding the common ground. So implementing these practices in your financial life may create feelings of resistance. Anybody ever tried to break a habit? Yeah. And this is a habit, isn't it? And what happens when we try to break a habit? The resistance comes up. But if you're committed to creating financial freedom in your life, you must be willing to be different in order to do different. If we continue to think as we've always thought, we'll continue to get the life we've always lived. So allowing our feelings of fear and anxiety to win keep us stuck. Our author ends this chapter by saying the reason most people never change is they can't get through the initial period of resistance. Isn't that true? Yeah. But you've got a spiritual toolbox. You've got spiritual support. Use those. Hang in there. Stay with it. So I want to thank you for being with us today. I appreciate each and every one of you joining us this morning. And I wish you good health and prosperity. Would you join me in some prayer? how good it is that we come together on Sunday morning in celebration of this thing called life, recognizing that life is in, through, and as each of us, as we are here breathing and our hearts beating. We recognize this thing that we call life as God, the power, the presence of life itself in, through, and as all that has ever been, ever will be, and all that is today. It is that animating presence. It is peace and love and harmony. It is joy. It is prosperity and clarity. And it is the infinite wisdom and intelligence that operates all. And as I know this, I know that I am a manifestation of it because there is only one. And I am as that, in that, as it is in, through, and as me. As it expresses life through me, individualized as only I can. And as I know that for me, I know that for each of us gathered here today, that we are all individualized expressions of God itself, having its way, its life through us, through our eyes, our experiences, our core stories, our archetypes, all of it is Spirit expressing through us. And so knowing this truth of our oneness, our wholeness and perfection in Spirit, I speak my word for and about each of us, knowing the wholeness and the perfection of life unfolding through us, according to our desires, according to our dreams, according to our thoughts, as we believe. I know, too, that for all of those in our sister state of California who are struggling under the flames throughout the state, we lift them up into the light and moisture of eliminating those fires, supporting each and every person and family that needs support, our first responders, our fire, knowing that all that they need is provided for them exactly as they need it, for safety, for security, and for an extinguishing of those flames. And we know for anyone suffering anywhere, peace and wholeness. And so I am so grateful for Brent Kessel and the material that he brought us in his book, that we were able to share the spiritual truth. And grateful for the manifestation of this prayer. As we release it into the activity of mind and the action of law, we affirm it together by saying, and so it is.